Welcome, everybody. We're going to have a smashing conversation today. Let me introduce Dr. Ty Vincent. So he is based out of Hawaii, originally from Alaska, because I asked, and he's a medical doctor, but he primarily specializes in low dose immunology, but also hormones, specifically testosterone and of course the other hormones. But I've looked at a lot of your reels and I've seen you comment on magnesium and just vitamin D, everything. So it's not like you've isolated your practice into just one area. So thank you for making the time today to speak to me. I know it's super early, but you're gracious enough to hop on with your coffee. Thank you.
No problem. I'm happy to be here. I like this conversation.
It's going to be great. So right now, there's a lot of talk around hormones, especially in the perimenopause. Like it's all the estrogen, progesterone, and that's really where the focus is, not only here on YouTube, but Instagram. And I'm culprit. I've done it as well because, of course, my clients need it. So I'm trying to stay on top of it. But one hormone that's gotten overlooked and even, shall we say, villainized is testosterone. And and I know you do too, testosterone still, when we hear people speak about it, it still kind of gets pushed into the category of like, oh, this is an illegal substance. You shouldn't be using this. Only the bodybuilders use. Like, there's such a negative association to testosterone, which is bizarre because it is a hormone, but this really is your field. So I wanted to get you on because it's not just for the men, it's for the women too.
Right.
So let's start
Yeah. Well,
really simply.
it is showing up all over the place. It used to just be you would see erectile dysfunction advertisements, right? Those were popular. And then in the last 10 years on social media and the internet and on TV, you see just people talking about low testosterone in general and all the things that they want to sell you to try to boost your testosterone level up internally, right? There's just this huge market for it. It seems like it's talked all over the place on podcasts, even in the general like media and whatnot. People mention occasionally the low testosterone being noticed in men more and more. And it's absolutely happening. It's not something false, right? That people are just making up. I've been treating men with TRT for probably 20 years now. And two things that I've seen: the number of men, the percentage of men with clinically low levels where they have obvious symptoms and it's affecting their life, has gone up so high. I have this like just sense that it's every man now, which is probably not true. And I do occasionally see a guy who seems totally fine on their own. But the problem is men with low testosterone don't know they have low testosterone. They think they're okay where they are, right? Like everybody gets used to your situation. You
Hmm.
get in a cold plunge and you think you're going to die for the first 10 seconds. And then you kind of settle in, right? We're very adaptable creatures. So people get used to their situation no matter how bad it sucks. That becomes normal. And it's hard to explain. I'll have men in my office who are obviously super deficient, and I'll have this conversation with them, like, we should check your testosterone. And they go, oh, I don't know. I don't want to. And it's because, like you said, our society has this weird bias against this hormone. And then I'll have to convince them, you should really try this. Everything you've complained about is related to this. And you think it's something else, but until we cover this one obvious deficiency, why should we try anything else? And then they'll finally go, okay, fine, I'll try it. And then in a few weeks, they're like, I can't believe how much better I feel. I can't believe that I could live my life this way. I will never go back, to how I felt. But it's that perspective when they're stuck in the dark hole. They just, they feel kind of nihilistic and defeated and pessimistic and negative and irritable. That's how the male brain is with low
Oh,
T.
yeah, yeah.
Just in
I
general.
won't disagree there.
No, we make really miserable partners. We make miserable fathers and miserable employees. And we might grind our way through our day just so we can go home and take a nap or drink some more coffee and sit and watch TV because we got no energy to do anything else.
Do you
And
think,
as
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
yeah.
so I don't lose my train of thought, do you think part of the reluctance to even considering testing the testosterone is one, ego, because men and their egos, but two, a disillusionment around testosterone? Because I hear it often, oh, there's nothing wrong with my testosterone. I wake up with a morning erection. I'm fine. And I'm like, well, just because I have a period and I bleed, that's like saying I'm always ovulating, but that's not true. So I think like I do think there's an ego part. We don't want, as men, I'm sure, don't want to hear there might be something wrong with their quote manlyhood because that's how we associate testosterone. But then, well, I don't have the symptoms. Well, none maybe that you don't recognize.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was getting to. Is like they have all these complaints, but they don't attribute that to low testosterone, and it is ego, and I can attest to that. I was seeing men with low testosterone, in the early 2000s, and I eventually I just saw so many guys that were near my age. Even I was in my 30s. I was seeing men in their 30s, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to check my level so I can show these men what a real man's testosterone level looks like. Right. That
Mhm.
was the ego thing. That was because we were like, when did you first test yourself? What were you feeling? And I was like, I felt fine, I thought.
Yeah.
I'd already had 6 kids by then. No, I had, how many kids did I have by then? I was 45. I have 9 children. So I'm trying to like think back when they were born, but I had four or
You
five
had at
kids.
least one.
Yeah, I had 5. I know I had 5. Okay. I was on TRT when number 6 came along. I remember that. So I had 5 kids. I was running a really busy medical practice. I was really, really productive and active. I only needed like 5 or 6 hours of sleep. I was working out. I was still really fit. Had morning erections, had no issues with that at all. And so I checked my own testosterone level and it was in the mid 300s. It was like 347. And I was 35 years old. And I was just shocked. And at the time, that was the very bottom of the reference range that was being
Hmm.
posted. One of the things I rant about a lot to people is that the reference ranges laboratories use have drifted downward over and over and over again. Since then, like in the early 2000s, the most common reference range that was based on good epidemiologic data went from 347 to 1197. So it was like from 350 to 1200. And the middle, the median was 750. Fast forward to today, last year, I just got new lab values from one of the big labs, and they dropped their reference range all the way down to 173 to 740. So that means that now the upper cutoff is lower than the average was 20 years ago. And they've done this every few years. If you track, I have labs from the last 20 years, and they keep lowering the reference ranges, which is proof that the whole population's levels are dropping, right?
But is it also proof that the powers that be maybe are making it okay to have low testosterone? I mean, we spoke about HARP, so
Right. I know that's when I talk to people like, well, of course they want a bunch of don't want any real men out there. They're going to take over. I'm like, real men are just as easy to manipulate as low T men.
yeah,
Low T men
well,
are not going to
I
do
know,
anything.
yeah.
You want men to do something, they need to have testosterone. You can give like marching orders to a whole group of current like 22-year-olds. They're not going to march anywhere.
Yeah, they're like,
Don't
just
have
let me finish this game first.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm afraid to go out there. But back then it was that's where I was. I was like, oh, all these guys are low, low, low. And I was looking at the reference range. And then over time, I started to treat men. I put myself on TRT at 35. So I was like, all right. And I went through the whole process. I tried taking herbs and supplements, DHEA, tribulus, all these things to raise it. That brought it up maybe 50 or 100 points. And then I exercised really hard. I was already exercising pretty regularly, but I did like the P90X workout for the whole 12 weeks because the mythology, right, the old dogma is, well, if you exercise, it'll boost your production. No, actually, if you exercise, it will increase your demand. But if your production is stuck, guess what happens? Your level goes down. So after I did that, I retested myself and it was down to 211, which was like way below the reference range.
Hmm.
And I still, honestly, if you would have asked me whether I was healthy and fit and felt good, I was like, yeah, I'm one of the healthiest people I see. And that's the problem is you're always looking out from the inside and you don't really have perspective on yourself or what you could feel like. And
Hmm.
that's the conversation I have to have with men to encourage them. And then when I went on TRT, I was like, oh, I had no idea what deficiency symptoms that I did have. Right.
Hmm.
It was really educational. And then experimenting on myself and like more and more men over the years, I've probably put about 1,000 guys on TRT by now. And it's just very consistent, the results, the response, the change in men's life, the improvements in every aspect of life that you see. And this has become a big passion of mine in my clinical practice for a long time. I've been lecturing about it to other physician organizations for years and talking about it online and everything. And it's a huge passion because what I've noticed is anytime I can get a guy on appropriate testosterone management and their levels up where men truly function optimally, it is a life-changing thing. And that man goes from being a kind of like low-level member of society getting by to a productive, strong-minded member of society who's going to do good for the world instead of do the minimum. You
Mm.
know, it's a public service the way I look at it. Every guy I get on optimized TRT is a public service.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, a lot of men have a negative feelings about it because of our cultural biases, and I have my own theories about where those come from. And then they've talked to guys where they themselves have tried testosterone, usually from some dude at the gym with no management, no professional help. No, even if you see a doctor, you really don't get professional help because none of them know what the hell they're doing. There's no
Not
education
even
about it.
with female hormones.
No, they don't. There's no education about it in medical training, and it's because hormones are not patentable. They're not pharmaceuticals. You can't make a ton of money on them.
Hmm.
So they don't really want to deal with it, but they're the most powerful tools we have clinically. You know what they're going to do in the body. It's predictable. It's measurable. It's completely adjustable. It's the most powerful tool we have, honestly.
Mm.
Uh, so,
And this is where some of the disillusion is that these are actually already in our body. We already have them. We just are not making enough or even utilizing enough for whatever reason. But clearly, like, you're right, you're changing lives, probably saving lives as well, because we know testosterone and suicide, there's a connection there. But you're clearly comfortable not only speaking about it, but using it too. And I do want to get into that because I've listened to a lot of your content. That's how I like reached out. It was like I need this guy on, especially around the using it in our youth aspect. So we'll get into that next. But first, just to kind of clear up the air, because again, the confusion, and even with women's hormones, this confusion is there. Testosterone is a bioidentical hormone. That's
yeah.
what it is. There technically shouldn't be anything, quote, illegal about it, but apparently there is. And when used in the correct context with the correct guidance, it is perfectly safe for most people.
Oh, it's not only safe, like giving men testosterone inarguably increases their life expectancy dramatically. There's lots of epidemiologic data looking at people living to longer ages and what do they correlate with. And the higher you have, the higher levels people have of DHEA, testosterone, and growth hormone, the longer they live. And it doesn't mean that supplementing all of those will make people live longer, especially growth hormone. Growth hormone has more negative effects than positive effects. I don't advocate using growth hormone like at all, but DHEA and testosterone are anabolic throughout your entire life. And they help you rebuild tissue, heal from injuries, combat inflammatory conditions, be stronger, healthier, have a higher metabolic rate, cholesterol levels go down, just everything's better. And the only long-term study that's been done looking at cardiovascular risk was dramatically in favor of TRT.
Mhm.
The men, there were like 300 guys in each group, followed them for about 5 years. The men that didn't get treated, there were 19 of them that died from cardiovascular events, heart attacks and such. And in the group that did use TRT, there was zero, no cardiovascular deaths in the treatment group.
Mhm.
That's astronomical. Like what they said in their statistics was TRT apparently reduced the risk of cardiovascular death by 60 to 90%. They couldn't really do the math because they had a zero and you can't divide by zero. But that's what they came up with. Like, why isn't that on the front page of the New York Times? Why isn't that all over the TV? It's
And
not because
would we argue, or would you argue that part of that is by utilizing TRT, men are more resilient, there's better stress management. We could see a ripple effect into the marriage, happier marriages, and we know stress and inflammation really are the primary causes of cardiovascular disease. That TRT is just at a foundational level helping with the stress management.
yeah. Well, it also improves your insulin sensitivity because your muscle mass is thriving and using energy. So you don't have all this energy storage building up, right? If you're not using energy, you're just storing it, it just becomes fat in all of your tissues, visceral fat, subcutaneous fat. Your cholesterol levels go up and maybe the plaques grow faster because there's more, material in there too. So the cultural bias against testosterone is purely from the fact that it's banned from athletic competitions. The Olympics, they can't use it. The NCAA college athletes can't use testosterone. The only professional sport that is encouraged to use it is the bodybuilding world. And that's why the stuff is all available online, because they have to have a place to get it. So there are a lot of websites that people can just buy the stuff from, because IFBB says, yeah, sure, get stuff from here.
And that's
But
primarily because the goal is to be your best and show how superhuman you can become. Like that really is the whole idea behind these shows. So, but as well, what you're saying around the athletics, we had that cyclist, I can't remember what his name was, who was
Lance
using.
Armstrong, the Tour de
Yes, and there was so much controversy around him. And for the lay person, all they heard is, "Oh my God, it's so bad. He was using like testosterone and other stuff as well. It wasn't just testosterone with him." But the keywords there was, "Oh my God, it's so bad." And that was the limiting factor. There was no detail. There was so then again for the lay person, you hear this over and over and over again, and you start to really believe TRT is problematic. And then there was another conversation like, oh my God, it causes prostate cancer as well, which I would argue actually it doesn't.
uh,
How it might, quote, might be connected is the factor of aromatase converting it into estrogen. And then why are you converting it? Do you have a shitty diet? Do you not live a good lifestyle? Do you not sleep? Do you have loads of inflammation? Like, why are we pointing the finger at testosterone when we should be pointing the finger at you and your lifestyle habits?
yeah, and to that point, I can say with a lot of confidence now that I've been done this for so long, testosterone itself has absolutely no negative effects. Just the testosterone molecule, all of the potential negative consequences of going on TRT are mediated by the estrogen if your estrogen levels go too high, or DHT, dihydrotestosterone. That metabolite will make your hair fall out and make your prostate grow. But estrogen is the devil for men especially, but also for women. Like I have to put women on estrogen lowering agents a lot these days because people run really high levels and they have high levels of xenoestrogens from plastics and things that also contribute to the physiology, but you can't measure them. So I have to lower estrogen people a lot to get rid of certain symptoms that they have. But in men, enlargement of the prostate, putting on more body fat, getting weird emotional changes, all these things. You can even have a higher risk of
Lactating.
estrogen alone won't do that. You
Well,
also need,
prolactin and
yeah, you need that too. But yeah, all of these things, it's estrogen that's the problem, and it's easy to monitor and easy to control.
Mhm.
And then I guess there's also this modern push now. Some people out there saying, well, you shouldn't need to use an aromatase inhibitor to lower estrogen. That just means you're on too much testosterone. No,
That's
it does not.
bullshit.
Like you
Yeah.
said, there are all these things that alter people's physiology now. I see men with low testosterone who have high estrogen all the time. You
Oh
can
yeah.
see them around there. They're very like smooth. Their body hair doesn't really grow as much. They're very doughy looking, texture wise. They look just tired and kind of puffy, and they might have varicose veins on their legs. The older guys. You'll see
Because
these, and
their
they have
circulation
breast
is shit.
development area. Well, it's just that they have such a high estrogen state. Estrogen causes veins to dilate. It causes veins to grow and dilate and proliferate. So that varicose vein thing is almost always a high estrogen symptom in women too. And
It's
that's
actually it's my understanding as well that because estrogen is anti-thyroid, and we know that when there's low thyroid function, especially in men, they will struggle to grow hairs on their legs. So, I
yeah,
mean, you have a shit ton of estrogen, you are going to have all of these issues, regardless if you're a man or a woman. And just to clarify, because this comes up all the time, people get very like defensive over estrogen. Like, no, why do we have so much estrogen in our body? We're not specifically talking about the estrogen that your ovaries or your natural tissues are producing. We're talking about the compounding effect of all of the xenoestrogens, even the estrogenic activity we can get from foods we're consuming. Like it's all the other stuff, which is where the problem is.
yeah, it all piles up. And the only part you can measure and control directly is the part that is biologically produced. You can measure that. There is actually in the last few years, I started doing a lot more testing. I was not really managing hormones for a while. I was just working from home doing immunotherapy for people. Then I got back into a lot of hormone therapy the last couple of years. And I used to always measure a test called total estrogens, right? When you measure your estrogen levels, there's a total estrogens test, which pools all of your estrogenic molecules together and gives you one sum total score. And that was what I usually relied on to screen men for estrogen conversion. But what I found in 2024, when I was doing a lot of testing, was that sometimes that number is skewed dramatically high. I would see, like for a man, their total estrogen shouldn't really go above 100. It's just nice to see between 50 and 100. But I would see guys with levels in the 500s or higher.
Crazy.
I saw one with a level of like 5,000 one time. And then I would recheck their estrone and estradiol levels, like what is going on? And they'd have like, more typical, levels. Like a guy's total estrogen would be 500 and his estrone and estradiol would add up to 85. I'm
Mm.
like, okay, well, then what's this gap? So I came
Yeah.
up with the estrogen gap, and it's xenoestrogens. But the thing is that most xenoestrogens don't have a similar enough chemical structure to show up on that test. And
Mm.
when I was doing loads of testing on men prior to 2016, I never saw this phenomenon. So sometime between 2016 and 2024, some new chemical class or a new chemical specifically must have been introduced to the public, like in beverages, like plastic bottles. I'm thinking it's probably something in plastic because I see it commonly enough that there's this crazy high estrogen on the total estrogen test. So I no longer run the total estrogens test because it's totally unreliable.
Hmm.
I have to check the individual.
Or it's harp again, back to harp. All our problems could just be harp manipulating us. It's funny that you see that dramatic change in that time frame, because really, at least from what I noticed with the conversation around COVID in that time frame of 2020, 24, that's where I started to notice the pickup of the conversation around fertility in men and testosterone in men. And maybe it was a case that I was just paying more attention than I normally did, but that's where I saw like people like, oh, they're trying to kill us, our fertility's going through the floor, like all that conversation. And again, it could have been because we were all at home, we'd nothing better to do. We were just talking about everything.
Worrying and ruminating and
Yeah.
stressing out things, finding things to get stressed about. I don't think it's on purpose. People always bring up like, yeah, the powers that be, they just want a bunch of weak people. I'm like, we're all going to be dying a lot younger too. It's like the rich people in the world are only rich because there are poor people to funnel the money up to the top, right? It's not self-serving to kill off a portion of the population that you live off of. It's like the top people are the parasites living off of our labor. They don't want the workforce to be depleted. I think it's completely accidental. Is because people just want to live a more convenient, easy lifestyle. So they keep making chemicals that'll preserve your food for longer, that'll make plastics that you can do all kinds of interesting things with, make, whatever the stupid Labubu dolls are or whatever. You're going to make all this crap just to entertain the masses. And the crap is all made out of toxic chemicals. And then it just ends up in the water, in the air, and in your babies. And one of the scariest thing to segue towards the conversation about teenagers and testosterone is that like the research shows certain key chemicals dramatically reduce the level of testosterone production from the testicle. The one I found with the strongest effect is glyphosate, which is from Roundup, right? And glyphosate is now in the entire planet. Like I don't think you could sample groundwater anywhere on the planet and not find glyphosate.
Hmm.
You find it in all human beings. It's just so prolific now, it's everywhere. And there's no getting rid of this shit because it's not going to break down. It's not going to go
Oh
away.
yeah. Yeah.
It's terrifying. And so that there's a study you could find, there's probably been repeated, but just with human testicular cells in culture, if they put 1 part per million of glyphosate in the solution, the production of testosterone goes down by a full third, like 1 part per million. And if you measure urine samples on humans in America, North America, Canada, everyone's pissing out more than that.
Hmm.
And so another study I found looks at the fetus. So inside mom, while while the fetus is developing, it produces a certain amount of testosterone from the fetal Leydig cells in the testicle, produce a little bit of testosterone. That little bit of testosterone is sort of like fertilizer and incubation for the adult Leydig cells that are currently stem cells. They're not active yet, but they have to be kind of nurtured and activated in utero by the testosterone that's being produced by the fetal testicle. And since that's being suppressed so dramatically by all the chemicals that are in pregnant women today,
Hmm.
the adult Leydig stem cells never get activated. And so that's what we're seeing now, is that when boys are supposed to turn into men, their testosterone doesn't boost. I mean, I test. You should arguably, and I could go on why I think this, but you should definitely be seeing testosterone levels above 2,000 in adolescent and young men. That's where we are supposed to be. The reference range now goes from 173 to 740, which is insane.
It's just crazy.
And so they're just moving the goalposts so the players don't even have to walk anymore.
Yeah.
But you're supposed to be shooting way up above 2000. And what happens when they hit puberty, the rest of their body might still be growing and developing and everything they're supposed to, but their testosterone does not kick on. And at age 15 or 16, this young man this young boy that was super vibrant and everything was normal, they suddenly change and they start taking naps all the time and they have no motivation and they seem shy and introverted and fearful. and they just won't get started. They have no direction, they have no confidence, and they also can't gain strength. They just go to the gym and work, and then they're just tired and take forever to recover. They don't build anything, and their
Mhm.
mind isn't developing. They don't develop a strong sense of self and purpose and morality, and they're
And
just
they
stuck.
can't see it. They cannot see it
No,
because I was saying to you, I have a 20-year-old and soon to be 13-year-old, and if he didn't have me to give him a kick up the ass, I can only imagine where he is. But to him, like I can see where this could potentially go if we don't rein this in real fast.
soon, right?
But he doesn't see it because, of course, he's 20 and he knows everything and I know nothing. But
And that,
also, like, back to the whole glyphosate thing, as a mom of two boys, and I buy grass-fed organic, like, because it's my
yeah,
profession, I'm very, some might say anal. I don't say anal, but but I'm on top of it and they have their supplements. My kids are not on medication. We use incandescent lights, like all the things, but I
yeah.
still see some of the symptoms there, and that makes me think like it's how horrible it is for these other kids that don't have these extra factors. And people still argue with me to this day that they don't believe the whole pesticide, herbicide theory, and you see it online. Oh, this study said this, it's perfectly fine. And come on, like really, you can't be that
Industry
naive.
research. Yeah, it's the industry research. You can, you can get a scientist, or the people doing the work to fudge whatever they want. You can manipulate a few variables, you can totally sway the outcome, you can decide which studies you ran to publish and which ones not to publish. There's not a mandatory publishing rule, so you can do internal research and have 4 out of 5 studies show that there is a negative effect, and only release the 5th study to the media.
Mhm.
You can't really believe what's in published research anymore, which is unfortunate. But the powers that be learned a long time ago that if you control the information, you control the truth, right? As the public sees it. And it's easy to do. And all you have to do is go on PubMed. So PubMed is a publicly available free website. You can look up the abstract, at least, for all, like, millions of published articles in the area of health and wellness and science. And it's even veterinary medicine and things like that, and biochemical research and genetics, but also clinical medicine. And if you look up whatever chemical, just go there and put in glyphosate and testosterone deficiency,
Mhm.
and you'll find the articles that are about that subject. So pick it. If you don't want to believe that a chemical is bad, there's no place for belief in medicine, in my opinion. I say this all the time. There's really no place for belief in science and medicine. There's a hypothesis, okay?
Yeah.
And then your job is to test it and find out if it's true or false. So if you don't want to believe it, go to the PubMed site, put in your favorite chemical and testosterone deficiency, and see if anything comes up. And you may be shocked to find that a lot of chemicals are clearly associated with a decline in testosterone production. And what we don't know is what's the effect of 10,000 freaking chemicals in your body at one time?
Yeah.
That's not better. That's definitely going to be worse. And that's where we
You
are.
do you know, because we mentioned the athletic associations, you would know better than me. Are we, not we, but are they allowed to use testosterone in the military to enhance soldiers' performance?
No. And this
But
is
like
one
that
that,
would make sense. If I was running a country,
well,
I'm like, take all the testosterone.
well, part of the problem is our culture thinks that, they use the term roid rage. There's a big, broad belief that
But don't
testosterone
you want that
can't
though?
be.
You want to
No,
win a war. Like I want that.
want them to be willing to fight and more able to fight and fight for longer, right?
Mm.
I agree. I've been preaching about this for a long time, and I even talked to some people in Alaska where I practiced about it that were from the VA, and when I'm like, I would like to talk to somebody in the military about doing a TRT program for soldiers. Like, why would you? But they won't. They're like, if the guy's on testosterone, they're like, we won't even let him in. It was what I've heard sort of outside the system, right?
Makes zero sense. Like, because
Amen.
it's a bioidentical hormone. Like, come here, Putin, if you're listening, not that we're on your side, but I'm assuming he's using a load of that to kick ass
Probably.
because I'm thinking of, I don't know, you probably do remember, like, Dolph Lundgren was in that soldier movie, and like, don't we want all of our soldiers to be like him so we can win?
They're also smarter. They have faster processing times. Testosterone improves every part of your life, from your brain to your skin, as every part of your life is better. You heal, you recover, you need less sleep, you think faster, and men are generally also more kind when they're on testosterone. They're more understanding, they're more compassionate because they don't feel like such dog shit on the inside, right? When you feel so terrible inside, it's pretty hard to care about how anybody else feels. Everybody's been there, right?
Oh yeah.
And men walking around all the time. But yeah, it makes no sense to me. And again, it comes back to this cultural bias that, oh, you're cheating, right? Like when you were talking about the guy, the Tour de France, like people just see testosterone as cheating. Okay, but if you're not making a normal amount, so I'm just talking about supplementation to optimal human levels, that shouldn't be cheating. That should be optimizing your health and fitness, right? And I see it totally differently, but it's hard to get the culture change. Look at marijuana. The conversation around marijuana has taken decades to get people to understand that this isn't actually harmful and it has a lot of potential good for people. And that's been a very slow process, changing the cultural viewpoint. And the same thing with testosterone. I'm like, this is something that makes every aspect of your life better. It's something that is critical for the development of a boy into a man. Like we were talking about with your son and his whole cohort, his age group. Young teenage guys today are not becoming men. They're stopping far short of where they should be for their potential manhood, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally. And that's the bigger problem because you have a whole cohort of men growing up and they aren't going to contribute to society the way that they could, you know, and the way we need them to, because our population's also falling off a cliff pretty soon.
I heard recently Dr. Andrew Huberman say, which he's pretty popular everywhere. He said testosterone makes effort feel good, and it really like clicked. I was like, man, that's great. Like I it is. I think, and I should test it. I think I have a lot of testosterone. I mean, I have all the markers, but some
Yeah.
days I don't want to put in any effort, but most of the time effort feels good. And when he said that, it's almost like a light bulb went off. Our young people complain about putting any effort in. I'm the first one to say, because the guys in the gym laugh at me. We have windows all in front of the gym where people walk past.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they'll just laugh. I'm like, what is happening here? Like, I'm surrounded by pussies. What is going on here? And like, it's just because again, I grew up on the streets of Dublin. Like, there was a lot of roid rage, and I think it was au natural. It was just who we are. But
Who we were. It's like the same thing. We have pictures. One of the things we're going to put together on our social media is photographs of me when I was young, like up to age 14 or so, pre-puberty, and then me like college age. And the difference is ridiculous. Like you'd never think these were the same people. What puberty is supposed to do to the male body is like the Hulk transforming from Dr. Banner, you know.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
but it happens in a few years instead of like 2 minutes, and you just go, oh my god, your whole body changes. You start growing hair and all this, but no, the young men coming out today they're either obese because they got really bad lifestyle, or they're very thin and very tall. One of the things people look at a young man and go, oh well, he's really tall, he must have normal testosterone. No, testosterone is what stops your growth. Growth hormone makes you taller. And what gets you to stop growing taller is to have a surge of testosterone in puberty that signals your epiphyseal plates to stop growing. So your bones will stop getting longer once that happens. So the guys that have low testosterone actually are more likely to end up taller than you expect. So I see young guys walk around with their families and the kid's like 4 inches taller than dad,
And
but
scrawny.
half as wide. Yeah.
Mm.
Like that's what you see. You see these
Some of
weird.
the kids, because I go to two different gyms here, and some of the teens are jacked. Like, and I'm like pointing to my younger guy, like, you want to be like them because not only are they jacked, I see them there all the time. They're just as motivated as me, but they have the pretty girlfriends, they have cars. You can tell this kid has ambition and he's going to make something of his life. Like, even turning up in the gym every day, as you know, that in itself shows you are not only determined, but you're willing to do the work. And if you're willing to do the work, you will have the good life as well. But as well, I speak about this a lot, like going to the gym in itself builds a lot of character. And I think society as a whole lacks character as much as everybody wants to be different now. They're all bloody the same. They're all the same. Like, get to the gym, do something useful.
Well, they don't know who they are anymore because like that strong sense of self, that strong internal will has fallen flat, especially for males. I would say that the world is very different how it's affected females. Like you're talking about, you might have fine testosterone, you got this get up and go and this drive and this like persistence and everything. And I have 5 daughters, and I actually feel very terrible for them about their mate choices if they are heterosexual, right?
Well,
It's
I've
like,
got two boys up this way.
well, my oldest daughter's 30, she's married. So there's that. She's a chiropractor. She's great. But what we've seen, my wife and I both talk about this, that the girls are now the dominant gender socially for sure. Like
Mm.
my wife just went on a field trip off island with our middle schoolers, their 8th grade class. So they're like 14-year-olds. And she's like, the girls were totally domineering and directing everything and, strong personality more than you'd like in a lot of cases. And the boys were sitting in chairs. They were like lined
On
up.
their phones and stuff.
No, they were giving each other massages. Like she sent me a picture. There was like 3 or 4 boys in a massage chain, and the girls are being like domineering and belligerent. I'm like, okay, we've
Just
had a complete gender reversal. The chemical soup that's in everybody's brain now has really kind of androgenized people, right? Like moved you closer to the center. You're less feminine if you're a girl, more masculine if you're a boy. You're less masculine, more feminine, and that is not probably sustainable.
it's problematic for sure. That's what I was saying to my last podcast guest is on one hand, and it does seem to be getting better on social media. If I'm correct, you don't use social media too much, but on Instagram, you
I'm on it. I don't look at it. We
well, you
paid someone
can.
else to produce
I know
videos.
there's the algorithm for sure, but does seem to be a lot more men coming on speaking about like being protective, being the dominant factor in the relation, and they're buff and they've no shame in taking their top off, which I'm not disagreeable to at all. So they can keep that coming. But then on the other side, you have the videos targeted at the young girls, and it is that you should be more ambitious. You don't need a man. You need to travel for your whole life as a career and never have kids. And you can have this Gucci bag and glasses, and you like, and it's pushing women in that direction. And you don't need to have kids till you're older, which I think is very problematic. I had my first child at 16, so which was very young, which at the time was a disaster shit show, but upon reflection, I've no regrets. But you see, but there is something slowly happening with the males. It's coming back slowly. If you know where to look, you're listening to you, the likes of Joe Rogan, Sean Ryan, something's happening for sure. But
Well, some people that are proactive, they're finding what they need and using what they need. And what's really unfortunate is that you're not going to get that from the medical community.
mm,
Like we talked, I think before you started the podcast, the recording, that the medical profession is not taught to even look at this in the right way, to identify the problem and to treat people with any sort of success. And that just makes it worse, because the more men start to become aware of this, they'll go get tested, and they'll be like, oh, my level is like in the low part of the reference range. I want to be in the top of the reference range. And the doctor will be like, oh, your level's 220, you're fine. The cutoff is 200, you're fine. Like, do you realize, number one, that reference range is a 95% section of a normal distribution of epidemiologic data looking at men's testosterone levels from age 19 to 40. So what I mean is they only trim off the last 2.5% on either end. And then they call 95% of it the reference range.
yeah.
That's like saying, well, the average, let's say IQ goes from like 40 to 180 or something. So if your IQ is 45, you're cool. Like, no, you don't want to be in the IQ of 45 category. And I don't want to be in a testosterone of 200 category. Thank you very much. All these things that it does, like, well, why can't you just supplement me with testosterone to move me up to the high end of the range? No, you don't need that. You wouldn't want to do that. Like, what? It just, the ignorance out there is astounding, and the fear behind it. It's baffling to me that the medical community writ large is just against this whole thing. And that's who should be embracing that this is a problem and developing a strategy for helping all these men if we're doing our job, right? If
Mhm.
you're doing your job, your job is not just to keep people from dying, which you can't do, by the way. You can only delay it and
Mhm.
make it more miserable. You want to enhance and prolong people's quality of life and give them a better, longer, healthier life, right? That's the job, the way I see it. And testosterone is the most effective, powerful thing we have at our disposal to achieve that. Period. For men in particular. For women, testosterone is not as big a player for women. DHEA, in my opinion, is a much bigger, more important anabolic steroid for women.
Yeah.
But again, that
That was
you
one
might,
of my, yeah, that
yeah,
was one
yeah.
of my, I just before I go on, I want to circle back to like using testosterone in our youth, but before, so I've mentioned several times, and I always do. I grew up in the streets of Dublin, very thick-skinned. I grew up around a lot of manly men. I was like, still am. Shh, don't tell my siblings, but I'm number one. So I went, like, I was my dad's firstborn, and man, they like idolized me. But I went everywhere with my dad. My dad had five or six brothers as well, and he grew up on the streets of Dublin in a rough part of Dublin, and he owned his own construction company. And I was always with him. Like I was his baby girl. I was on the sites with him. I was there when he would meet with customers. I was just always there. So a lot of what I saw and how he interacted with people and how he just acted in general, I almost absorbed all of it. And I think, well, it for sure is a big factor in my personality, my confidence, my drive. But what I wanted to ask you is in the aspect of our kids nowadays, do you think that is something that we also need to consider, not just the environmental toxins, but also the people we're around? Like your kids are obviously around someone highly ambitious, and I've seen your wife as well. You're both powerhouses, like, and that breeds powerhouses, shall we say?
Not anymore. Because so I have the unique, I guess, experience of having raised kids in three different decades of my life. I had three kids in my 20s, I had three kids in my 30s, and then I had three kids in my 40s. So I was raising kids, in the 1990s and early 2000s and then the 2010s. And what I have noticed with the internet and social media coming on and exploding is that children are far more influenced by what they see on the internet than by their parents.
Mhm.
And it has made parenting a nightmare, to be honest. Like I would encourage anybody out there with younger kids, don't let them be on social media at all till they're like 16 years old, and they might be able to start processing. And that's not their whole worldview from age, from early age. Because now, yeah, my older three kids that are now 30, 28, and 26, they would listen to me. We would have conversations, we would discuss things, and they would take in information and ask questions, and they could learn from me. And then the younger kids now, as they've gotten older and they have social media accounts and phones, they'll make a comment and I'll say, well, that's not really how it works. And they'll just yell at me that I don't know what I'm talking about, even call me a boomer or something. Like, screw you, man, I'm 52. And so it's like, wow, this is a whole shift and shock to me. That it used to be when you grew up, your influences were your parents,
We
your
didn't even
uncle.
have phones.
No, and so therefore you were only influenced in terms of framing your worldview and your behavior pattern and how you fit into society and everything by the people that you had direct contact with, teachers, coaches, clergymen, whatever, uncles, and that was it. Maybe the neighbor if they were friendly and had a relationship with you. And now everybody has to work, right? The economy has changed. So you have both parents usually having to work in most households. So you're not around. Other people physically are around your kid more than you. And then the whole world is influencing your child. And everything on social media is there to get your attention, be sensational, try to sell you on something or sell you on an idea.
Mhm.
And it's just completely changed where they get their influences from. And yeah, you would think at least being fit and healthy would be something they'd be into because they see how we live our life and we cook and provide healthy food. But still, my kids, every chance they get, they want to eat junk food. Like that's the number one thing. You take them to a store, can I get some junk food kind of thing? Like, Jesus, they don't
Yeah.
have the right, they don't have the right goals. No, yeah.
Yeah, but that's So I suppose like part of the answer is no, but also part is yes, that when they do put those phones down, they do need to have parents with strong personalities around them to, shall we say, push them in the right direction and force these conversations. And I was good again during COVID, people were saying a lot, they're trying to take our kids, they're trying to brainwash our kids and blah, blah, blah. And I was always saying, though, regardless of that, we're the parents. We should be the ones brainwashing our kids because that's our job. We're responsible for them. So the answer again, I would argue yes and no. Like when we get them off the phones or the computers, then we have to be that stronghold behind them. So that, yeah, I suppose I answered my own question.
Well, it's tough because then your kid hates you. I mean, it's and that's the tough balance as a parent is I know what's better for this kid than they do because I've been a kid and they have not been an adult. You know, and they don't appreciate that at all. Like they really need to stop doing this way. But if you take something away, they just see it as this horrible offense and punishment, and you're not going to get much agreement out of them. You're not going to get much cooperation out of them. It's you get really stuck in these places. So anyway,
Mm, yeah. So, well,
teenagers.
back to what I did want to lead on to next then, because you get a lot of pushback on this on some of your videos about how young you're open to starting a kid on testosterone, and people saying, "Oh, that's very negligible. You're destroying their hormones in the future." Oh, really, more than the McDonald's is? Like, come on.
I know.
But so what age are you comfortable with using testosterone with?
16. So what I suggest to people, and it is a global suggestion. Like if you have a teenage male, I would check their testosterone level at age 16. If they hit puberty early, like you'll see some guys who have a mustache in middle school, you know, that kind of thing. Those guys, their voice is already deeper. They're putting on bulk. Some people hit earlier, so you could probably test that guy at age 14 or 15, maybe. So there's variability. But when you notice that their voice is deepening and they're getting bigger and they seem to hit puberty and they're spending a lot longer time in the bathroom, you know, whatever. And around
I don't
16,
like to think about it.
oh, I thought you grew up on the streets of Dublin.
The
A lot
female
of
streets.
yeah, that's like okay, they're in puberty. It should be happening, and especially if you see that he suddenly starts taking naps all the time, being tired, unmotivated, like okay, like this is where the discrepancy has now set in. But age 16, I think, is definitely old enough. Like it used to be that we were men at 16. Age 16, you were done going to school, you were out like getting married, building your own house, and tending your own farm at 16. That's
Mhm.
our biology. Okay. It may not be our current sociology, but we're talking about biology, biological humanity. And so at 16, it's totally safe. And you look, and honestly, between age 16 and 25, a man's testosterone should be in the 2000s.
Mhm.
I'm convinced that that's where it's supposed to be. You won't find a laboratory reference range that reflects that because, like I said, they keep going down, 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 down. And I don't know where it's going to stop until we get to zero and there are no humans anymore. But that's where they belong. And you will probably see in the modern world, like when I test teenage guys, their levels are in the 400s. My first two oldest sons, I tested them at 16, and now they're now 28 and 19, and they were in the mid 400s, like around 440, both of them. And so they were the reason I tested was they were taking naps every day after school, and all the things I mentioned, like they just suddenly deflated, and they were like not functioning people anymore. And
Mhm.
so like, okay, let's go check it out because I was already really invested in this research and looking at this problem in the culture. And they had low levels, and I put them on testosterone injections right then, and it turned everything around 100%. Didn't need naps anymore. Going out, they got their driver's. Neither one of them wanted to bother getting their driver's license. They were just so unmotivated. They got their license. They're playing a sport. They get a girlfriend. They get a job, and both of them are moved out of the house right after high school and just took on
So
life.
that's the secret, is it? To get them out?
Well, I'll tell you, there's probably more to it than that for some people. But like if there's no gas in your car, you can tune it up and wash the windshield and change the tires. It's not going anywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
Like and these boys have no gas in their tank. They have no motivation, no energy, no resilience, no growth potential. They're just stuck. And if you put them on the hormone they're supposed to have, right? This is not a drug. Like you mentioned, like online, people are like, "Yeah, I wouldn't put my teenager on drugs." Like, really? The same person
Um,
who says, I would never give my kid testosterone at 16 will probably take them to therapy, put them on Adderall because they can't do their schoolwork, probably put them on an antidepressant, and it's like, give me a break. They're gonna drink coffee and energy drinks all day. That's a drug to try to function. And a hormone is not a drug. Like you said, it's a biologically identical molecule that our bodies produce. That is not what a drug is defined as.
mhm,
You're just giving them what they're supposed to have in the first place. The way I've always approached medicine is try to figure out the cause, like what's the mechanism, what's really going wrong. If there's a deficiency involved, the first thing you do is replace the deficiencies, replenish the deficiencies, give people what they're supposed to have before you start putting other crap in their body to falsely, artificially manipulate your physiology, whether it's an herb or a high level of some supplement or a pharmaceutical. You're usually interfering with a physiological process with all those things, not
mhm,
the supplements.
mhm.
Why not maximize their hormone level first and see what you get? And what you're probably going to get is a fully functional, transformed young man. And
Mhm.
that brain development, not just the physical development of your skeleton and your muscle mass building and everything, the brain development that's supposed to occur between 16 and 25 is massive. You're supposed to go from a boy brain to a man brain to being a functional, productive, protective, strong man.
And
And that's not
attractive to women, because I would argue there's a lot of women that can sense that, whether or not it's pheromones or just the vibe you're giving off. We can sense this man can protect me, he can provide for me, he would be a good partner.
exactly. And it is biological. Women won't even realize why. There's still the science of human pheromones. They haven't really been able to find them. Do
Mhm.
we have pheromones or not? We probably do. And the other thing we have is on the metaphysical feeling. Like people are becoming a little bit more aware as a culture of the metaphysics of who we are, the quantum reality of what human beings are, and that we can sense things from one another. Like you can sense confidence, you
Mhm.
can sense fertility. Like women, when they're ovulating, men know. They don't consciously know, but the woman who's ovulating in the bar will have a lot more men around her than the woman who's not.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, I don't know why. I want to go talk to this woman. And the woman is more apt to accept
Vibrant,
it too. Yeah.
yes.
I've had a lot of women that say, I got pregnant from a one night stand. What are the odds of that? I go, it's really good actually, because that's the only time
Well,
to be interested in a one night stand is when you're ovulating. It's just
yeah.
how it lines up. But it's just biological.
Would you ever make an exception with the age limit on boys if a mother or a family came to you distressed that a younger child, 14, 13, was in a lot of distress, maybe with the excess adrenaline, depressive issues, maybe threatening suicide? Like, would you make an exception and say, how about we try this before we start putting them on all this other crap?
Oh, there's so many other things that can cause those sorts of symptoms. So like if there was a kid in that age range, I would look at other hormones like their cortisol production, DHEA production, which is going to be a factor earlier than testosterone in life. And look at if they're small, look at growth hormone levels, look at their diet, their social, all the psychological inputs to them. There's a lot of other things that I might look at before testosterone. I would check it out of curiosity, maybe. But the thing is, if you do testosterone levels in boys up to age like 14, you're probably going to see levels well below 100, like 50s or something, and that's because that's where they are in development. It's like if it was a young teen who looked like they had hit puberty early and they had the physical development, then like I said, it would be more relevant at that point in time. But I'd
Mhm.
probably think about other things in a 12-year-old. Like, okay, there's other stuff going on that you want to look at. Testosterone is really an adolescent sort of surge thing, and that's where it becomes more meaningful to test it. Like you said, with people talking about the pushback of, oh, I wouldn't put my kid on this, drug or hormone, whatever. Like, how many people put their daughter on birth control pills when she's 12?
Mhm.
You know, because she has painful periods, or she gets migraines, or she has like whatever, or her periods are irregular, or they have PCOS, they get something going on, and they go, oh, let's put her on a birth control pill. What's the difference? You're giving them a hormone and screwing with their chemistry in a
Mhm.
way that isn't even health promoting. There's nothing health promoting about a birth control pill. They just shut off the pituitary signal so your ovaries go to sleep, and that's not beneficial.
Mhm.
is that you're supposed to try to ameliorate these medical complaints and stuff, and that's fine. But they'll do that, right? They'll like put a girl on a birth control pill, and then how dare you put a young teenage male on testosterone when it's only going to make everything about their life better, honestly.
Well,
And it's birth control. It's also perfect birth control. Well, not perfect. It's 99% effective contraception. While a guy's on TRT, they don't make sperm. It's a beautiful thing.
well, birth control has been normalized. Like, oh, it's not a big deal. Don't ask questions. You won't get the answers you don't want to hear, that kind of thing. So, I want to just take a break from the testosterone kind of for a second, if you don't mind. And I was wondering if we could speak a little bit about andropause, because a lot of women, again, perimenopause is everywhere now, postmenopause, but men,
Yeah.
you don't really get off completely scot-free. So, can we speak about that a little?
I don't think andropause is a thing. I think andropause is a term that's made to try to explain what we're seeing in our population. What we're seeing in our population is men. The theory there is, oh, you get up to middle age or whatever, and then your testosterone falls, and so you have this. But that's not analogous to menopause. Menopause is when you run out of eggs.
Mm.
Okay, no more eggs. The ovaries are like, well, what do we do now? FSH and LH go way up. Hormone. The ovaries basically like dry up, right? They stop producing. But that's not what happens with men. Men can still produce sperm into their 70s, 80s, probably.
Hmm.
So there isn't really a male menopause. We don't stop making gametes. We don't stop producing sperm, and our hormones gradually decline, but there's not an abrupt drop like in women. At least biologically, that's how it's supposed to go. But now it's just such an epidemic of men with low testosterone that we're trying to create terminology to describe what we're seeing and sort of suggest that it's physiologically normal. And it's not. It's not at all. And now, I said the younger generations, men under 40, most of them never had a normal testosterone production at all. So there's nothing to even pause. Like it's just never there in the first place. And they don't even have any clue what they're missing. The young guys have no idea that they're deficient in anything. They just know that their life is what it is. Whereas guys in my age group will be like, I don't feel right anymore because I know how I felt when I was 20 and I am like, I have faded. So they have this perspective that the
Hmm.
young don't. They just don't have, they have no idea what they're missing,
Hmm.
you know, and that is the difference. So the older guys, yeah, you'll get them to a point where like, hey, I'm starting to decline. But like I mentioned before, if you see a really healthy, fit older man and like 75 to 85 years old, I've had a number of these guys contact me because they're like, I'm not feeling as vibrant as I'd like to feel. Well, good for you. Let's see
They
what we can do.
know. Yeah.
And they still have testosterone levels in the 800s. Some of them 900. I talked to a 76-year-old a couple of weeks ago. He had a level in the 900s, and he's complaining because
That
he's
is
like,
fun.
I don't
Because he
have
has
the
a
energy.
baseline that the young people don't have nowadays.
And I'm like, your level is easily twice as high as the average 18-year-old right now.
Yeah.
And that is the fact. They see these healthy guys in their 70s and 80s, they run in the 800s. I almost never see a man under 30 with a level of 800 or better. It
Mm.
is, they're unicorns if there are any out there anymore. It is so bad. And our culture just keeps looking at it like, well, this must be normal because it's so common. Normal and common are not the same thing. Okay, it would be normal to be obese in America if you want to go by that standard, because most people are obese in America now. It's way over 50%. Like, so
Mhm.
that makes it normal.
Well, it's common, but it's definitely not normal. Like
Exactly. Common and
blue
normal.
hair nowadays is very common, but it doesn't mean it's normal.
No, and you need to recognize the problem for what it is. Just because the problem is near universal still doesn't
Doesn't mean
doesn't
it's
make
okay. Yeah.
no.
We spoke a lot about men, but a while back you did mention testosterone for women in
Yeah.
DHEA. And I actually do have some clients that are fairly well educated on this. They know they should be monitoring their testosterone, a few of them using testosterone gels. How important is testosterone for women overall. So not just because a lot of the conversation is like post-menopause. I've had Dr. David Rosensweet on the podcast, and he specifically says that if you're 3 years post-menopause, at that stage, he's putting all of his patients on testosterone with the other hormones. And that seems to be where we've kind of isolated testosterone for women right now. But what about like pre-menopause?
Yeah, so women do need a certain amount of testosterone. The biggest difference between men and women hormonally is testosterone. Our estrogen levels really aren't that different. Like a woman's estrogen level might be 2 or 3 times higher than a man's at both at good health. But testosterone, like a woman, I like to see women with total testosterone levels in the 70s, 80s, even up to 100. Women seem to do really well. But a lot of them, when you test them, they're in the below 20 or in the 20s. That's where a lot of people run. Whereas men need to be above 2000. So the difference there is astronomical. So it's a much smaller player for women. And in a woman, almost all of your testosterone is actually made from DHEA, and DHEA is an adrenal steroid. So there's a very little amount put out by the ovary in women. Unless you have polycystic ovary syndrome, then you have this big crazy shift and you have a lot of testosterone being produced, and that's part of the physiological problems that they run into. So testosterone, I rarely put women on testosterone, rarely, because if a woman has low testosterone, it's because they have low DHEA. So almost all, the bulk of it, 90% or better, comes from DHEA. So don't just measure testosterone, go, oh, that's low, let's give you that. Because then you're missing this other piece that they're also very deficient in. And in terms of health and fitness and wellness and all the things you get out of your anabolic steroids, DHEA is more important for women than testosterone is. If you have a woman with low DHEA and you just skip it and put them on testosterone, more often than not, you're going to get more negatives than positives, is my experience. So if you put them on DHEA first, and then you recheck it, if you get their DHEA level up to where you like it, and their testosterone also rises, which it usually will, it will rise at some proportion. In most cases, DHEA is the only one you have to give the woman, and then they raise both of those levels, and everything falls into place. So you should always do that first, rather than bypassing the DHEA deficiency and going straight to testosterone. That's a mistake, in my
Do
opinion,
you
because they're
have
going
a
to have a lot of deficiency problems still from the low DHEA.
do you have a concern that some of the DHEA might convert to estrogen or influence
Yeah.
estrogen?
Yep. So that has to be checked also. That's the same thing with testosterone. When I put men on TRT, a proportion of it will become estrogen.
Mhm.
And that's going to happen. So you just check the estrogen levels. And if there is excessive conversion, you put them on an aromatase inhibitor to keep the estrogen levels where you want them to be. And it's the same thing in women. I put women on an anastrozole or letrozole, the aromatase inhibitors, all the time, because
That's what
I'll
I was
see
gonna
women that
ask.
are having all these symptoms. They're gaining weight, they're sluggish, their mood is all over the place, their periods are really heavy, their breasts are tender, or whatever. Or sometimes they don't have any of those symptoms. They're just like, it's all emotional, and they just feel so disturbed and out of sorts, and their estrogen levels are quite high. And I'll put women on an aromatase inhibitor, and sometimes they lose 40 pounds in 3 months without doing anything else different. Or, their hemorrhoids shrink up and go away. Their varicose veins shrink. A lot of things get better. They lose their body fat. They develop a more kind of normal, appealing female shape. Your hormones have a lot of effect on your whole shape and physiognomy. So I end up having to lower estrogen in women and men a lot these days. And people shouldn't freak out about that. Like, oh, I don't want to have to mess with those pills. Well, I don't want, you don't want to either. You shouldn't have to, but you do. Like, if you
Yeah,
really
it's
to
your
get everything
physiology.
where it belongs, you got to have strategies for lowering the things that are too high. And so, yeah, in women, especially if their estrogen levels are already kind of borderline, it's something you look at. But there's this pretty small conversion rate. It's not going to necessarily make as big a difference for women as it does for men, because again, women can tolerate larger amounts of estrogen than men can. So it's a bigger problem in men, that estrogen conversion pathway.
I tried pregnenolone a couple of months ago, and man, that did not agree with me at all. I converted it all pretty much into estrogen. I got a bit of a allopregnanolone because I had my best sleeps ever, but the rest immediately converted into estrogen. And within a few days, I had put on like 8 pounds of fluid, breasts were sore, period was sore, stuff I never, ever, ever deal with. And I was like, uh-oh, we got a problem here. Stopped it. It still took me a few weeks to flush it out, and I use progesterone as well. So my hope was that, well, pregnenolone would give me a better bang for my buck. But no, progesterone, great, but I'm super sensitive to estrogen. So I try not to mess around with that too much.
Exactly. And that pregnenolone has really limited clinical value because it is the most upstream precursor steroid hormone. It's the first steroid hormone we make out of cholesterol, and it can become anything. Like, oh, I mean, a lot of naturopaths will use it when they work in states where they can't prescribe real hormones. Like, here, try some pregnenolone. Like, yeah, that's
Real
like
hormones.
rolling the dice,
Yeah.
They're going to roll the dice, and so let's just
See
cross our
where it
fingers
goes. Yeah.
and hope it becomes the thing that you need. Well, odds are it's not going to, right? Like the thing that they need, the thing that they're deficient in, their body is not producing for some reason, but it's not because of a lack of pregnenolone. I mean, if their other hormone levels are robust, then they obviously have enough pregnenolone, right? So the pathway from pregnenolone to that one hormone is where it's interrupted. So odds are you give them pregnenolone, everything else is going to go up, and the one you need is not. That's
Mhm.
just logic. That's how that works out. It's a very failed attempt at balancing hormones the vast majority of the time. It,
If
it
you're
sounds
using
good on paper, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, it does. I see a lot of people promoting it in my sphere, and I'm like, I feel like that's a bit risky because looking at most women nowadays, they're already having issues converting everything, so maybe we shouldn't be using that. But with DHEA, what are you dosing? I have clients that I will start at 25 milligrams. Most of them are post-menopause.
Yeah. Well, I guess I look at I do blood testing primarily for hormone levels. That's my preferred, and go on about that for a long time. But so you look at a DHEA sulfate level. That's for everybody. Hopefully, your clientele knows, your viewers know that DHEA sulfate is the metabolite you have to measure in blood because it's the most stable. It's not all over the place, but it's an inactive metabolite that has no activity. So it's a surrogate indicator for overall DHEA status. If I see a woman with a level below 200 or so, I will usually have them start on like 25 milligrams a day. Um, Above 300, most people are fine. Like you don't really see a lot of benefit treating people above the 300s. But sometimes you do if like they have a lot of symptoms, like, well, let's just try this and see. Or if the woman has low testosterone and a DHEA in the 300s, I'll probably go, well, let's give you 25 milligrams of DHEA and see if, it raises both of these enough. I have seen women who get very little response from that, and then they have to go to 50 milligrams a day. But most women will be adequate at the 25 I've seen. And it's what's important about this that I've noticed too is that there's a long phase. Like when you put people on it at first and you retest them within the first month, you'll see levels at a certain point. Like, oh, they came up 200 points, their testosterone rose too, everything's cool. Let's just leave you there. And if you retest them again 2 or 3 months later, you'll see that it's gone way up higher. So there's this saturation sort of
Mm,
stage that
yeah.
seemed to take a long time. And I've had to go back a few months into it and lower doses again. And that's something that I've been working with DHA and testing and treating a lot more in the last couple of years. And I've caught on to that phenomenon. And it's like, okay, we have to sort of reassess people about 3 months in and make sure that it's not too high. Because DHEA is from the adrenal gland. Like I said, it's regulated by ACTH from the pituitary, which also regulates cortisol. So if you push somebody's DHEA level up too high, you can actually shut off their ACTH and make them adrenal deficient in terms of cortisol.
Mm.
And then they start having all these stress response problems and, like anxiety and insomnia and heart palpitations and exhaustion. I'm taking all this DHEA. Why do I feel so horrible?
Mm.
And it's because now you've shut off their HPA axis and their adrenals are going to bed.
Yeah,
And
you're
so
out of
that's
balance.
something you have to check on. I mean, and DHEA is available over the counter, right? So this is a hormone that can
Not in
make your
Canada. Not in
oh
Canada.
yeah, true. Sorry, it's available over the counter here. You can probably order it through the mail from some other place in
Yeah.
America. But yeah, this one's available over the counter, and it can cause some serious problems if you're not, savvy about how this works. It's a problem. Whereas testosterone is a controlled substance, which is idiotic.
Which is bizarre everywhere as well. There's like no exceptions.
Nope. And it's just for the cheating thing. It's not because it's dangerous. It's not dangerous.
Mm.
What is dangerous is estrogen. Estrogen is available without it's a prescription, but it doesn't require DEA licensure. It's not a controlled substance. You can kill people with estrogen. You can cause uterine cancer, breast cancer, blood clots. People worry about blood clots with testosterone. there is no increased risk of blood clots with testosterone. There is no level of testosterone that puts a man at risk of blood clots,
Oh
period.
yeah.
Estrogen certainly does. Low estrogen, birth control pills, whatever, increases the risk of blood clots and death from pulmonary emboli or whatever. Different kinds of cancer, weight gain, migraine headaches. It just, the list goes on. Varicose veins, hemorrhoids, all these negative consequences of estrogen. And it's not regulated by the DEA. They just hand that stuff out. Like
We know
that's
this. We know this, and there's still professionals out there pushing it and promoting it. And then you ask, well, why? Why is this person pushing estrogen therapy so much? Like, who's giving her money? Put it like that.
there's
Um,
not a lot of money in it. It's just belief. It's dogma. People carry their beliefs forward. And I know this in the testosterone world because when I was learning the limited amount they taught us in medical training, you were taught the fears, right? Oh, testosterone, maybe it'll increase prostate problems and blood clots. They talk about blood clots because the heart, the hematocrit, your blood counts go up, you're going to get blood clots. And I was told that by my professors and was like, okay, I'll believe it. So when I started putting men on TRT, some of them, their blood counts would go high. I would send them to the blood bank to just dump some blood periodically, once a month or whatever. Excuse me. And after I sent several guys over, the wonderful doctor who ran the blood bank in Alaska wrote me a great letter and said, hey, I noticed you sent several of these guys over here. And so I did some research and you do not have to do this. It's like he's like, I thoroughly looked through all the literature. There is nothing that suggests there's an increased risk of blood clots, cardiovascular events, or anything from men who have polycythemia due to androgenic therapy.
mhm.
So he's like, so please stop sending them over. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. So I did my own research too, because I had never bothered to fact check what I was taught by my teachers. And honestly, we should fact check everything that we're told, even by the people that are supposed to be authorities, because most of what human beings believe is wrong. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
And so I looked at it and I stopped sending men for phlebotomy. And this is actually the most common argument I get into with other doctors is the blood clot thing. And I'm like, can you find me one study, one article that shows this increased risk? You
Mhm.
can't. It doesn't exist.
But
It's
show
and
me the list of young girls that you've put on birth control, because I'm sure it's pretty long.
sure, but yeah, and those cause well-known problems, and you're not making their lives better.
So we're coming up on time now. So that was a perfect segue into the meat and potatoes of the conversation that everyone wants to hear.
Yeah.
Testosterone. What is your favorite form? How do you like to dose?
Oh,
But more importantly, for those people, which there's a lot, especially in Canada, who cannot get any help from their doctor and are a bit apprehensive about ordering from the black market, how can they get testosterone?
the only legal way to get it through proper channels is to see your local physician or nurse practitioner or what have you and get it prescribed and get it from the pharmacy. And that's, it has to be somebody who has a DEA license. Well, in America, we call it a DEA license. I don't know what it is in Canada. But in America, you have to have a DEA license and it's individual for each state. So I talk to men online. I got men in other countries that see me for TRT management. And I can give them advice and let them know how to acquire their own stuff internationally through the websites like you talked about. But I can't prescribe it for them. I can't even prescribe it for men that are not in Hawaii. Hawaii is the only place I have an active DEA. So I just tell them, what I tell most people, men, is to get testosterone cypionate or testosterone enanthate. Those seem to work basically about the same, and they're pretty easy to find and cheap. And it either 250 per ml or 300 per ml concentration, so they don't have to inject as much volume. And on the websites where the bodybuilders get all their supplies and stuff, you can find all of these things. But I don't think the ester matters very much. The one testosterone ester I would suggest people avoid is testosterone undecanoate. I tried switching to that once because it supposedly lasts longer, right? It has a stronger binding affinity, so it releases into the bloodstream slower, right? So
Mhm.
I thought, I can do my shots less frequently. That stuff, I ended up with half the blood level that I thought I was going to get. And so what I think is because it's slower release, sometimes it just doesn't release at all. I think you don't get the dose that you think you're getting in the solution because of that binding affinity. And so my experience with it was not positive. I don't think the undecanoate ester is a good one to use. So either cypionate or enanthate, whatever, it doesn't seem to matter to me. They're all bioidentical testosterone. As long as the first word is testosterone, then the second word is just a component it's bonded to solubilize it in solution and to make it slow release into the blood. And that's fine. And then I honestly tell most men to look at getting about 2,400 or 2,500 milligrams a month total and divide it up into how often you want to do your shots. About the furthest apart you can do injections and still feel pretty even is 5 days. And even on the ones that they're supposedly depot testosterone, the books will all say you can do injections once a week. If you have an active person, somebody who goes to the gym, who has a physical job, they do a lot of physical activity, you're going to use up your testosterone a hell of a lot faster than if you were sedentary. So a guy who works a desk job, does no physical activity, sits on the couch when he gets home, he could probably do a shot once a week and not notice a significant roller coaster effect. But if you've got a physically active guy, weekly injections, that's terrible. They're going to feel, starting the second day, they're going to feel it and feel good. But by day 6, 7, they're fading, they're falling off a cliff and they got no energy again. And it sucks to have that variability. So what I have found is that if we can put men on a dosing regimen where their total testosterone stays well above 2,000, and even like the day their injection is coming again, it's still way above 2,000, like 2,500 or something, they will feel great the whole time with no ups and downs. If you're not giving men enough of a dosage to get their level that high, you feel all of the variability. And I think of it like an airplane. I told you got to get your airplane above the clouds where it's all blue sky. 25,000 feet, all blue sky. You can go to 30,000, it's the same. 35,000, it's the same. Whatever. That's all blue sky territory up there. But if you're below the clouds, you feel all the fluctuations and it sucks. So most doctors give much lower doses of testosterone, and men are fluctuating within this range. They'll do weekly injections. And so every day is different for them, because they're all subtherapeutic and every 100-point variation is palpable. So if you just give these larger doses, I use 250 milligrams every 3 days. That's what I do. I inject myself intramuscularly with 250 every 3 days. So I have like a 250 per ml, 1 milliliter every 3 days. And it is the most even that you'll get, because generally speaking, every testosterone shot rises and peaks on day 3. And then it starts to decline based on your activity level and how you're consuming it. So if you do injections every day on peak, 3 days apart, you have the most stable pharmacokinetic profile that you're going to have. And everybody seems to feel the best on the 3-day schedule. I did a 5-day schedule for like 15 years. And it was only in the last year that I started playing with it in different dosing schedules. It was like, oh crap, I could have felt better for those 15
Just
years.
wasted half my life.
I know. And that's one of the things that's been different about me is I'm always willing to change what I'm doing if there's something better. But that's rare. Most doctors will still just dogmatically do what they were taught to do 20 years ago. No, this is the way you do it. And I'm like, why do you think that? Well, this is the way I've always done it. That's not an argument for anything. Okay. The way you've always done it does not speak optimal to me. It's like if you haven't changed your practice in 20 years, you're a danger to society because you haven't learned a goddamn thing in 20 years. And that is sad. So like I do things differently all the time based on what new experience I have and what I've learned. And I'm always trying to do things better. But like this regimen, I have most guys, I'm like just 200 to 250 milligrams every 3 days. And I tell them to start there because I want men to feel what they could feel like, right? You want to feel that optimal effect. And so the tendency for most doctors is to start people at lower doses and gradually titrate them up over time. That makes a lot of sense when it's a drug because it's a foreign molecule. You have no idea how it's going to affect any given individual. But with testosterone, it's incredibly predictable how this is going to work. And there's no mystery. So I just find that if you start men at lower doses like that and gradually titrate up, every man will stop and be happy as can be halfway to what's truly optimal. Time after time after time, unless I get the really dedicated, motivated guys that are like that they do the competitive athletics or something, police officers, firemen. The most common guys I saw in practice were cops and firefighters because they have a job that's very high demand physically and mentally and stress wise. And they can tell right away that something's not right. And they'll come in and be like, I'm taking naps every day. I can't have time with my kids because I'm exhausted and I can't perform. And I'm like, yep, let's put you on TRT. And so with that crowd is where I learned that the optimal levels are in the 2000s. Because I used to give much lower doses. And over the time, some people be like, I just think I could maybe do better? Like, hey, let's try going up because we don't know. The reality is that it's not in the literature. There's no research about this. So my job is to figure it out, right? Well, let's try more and more. And so I did that with myself too over the years. And over the years, I verified that with man after man after man. We'll titrate them up if they want to go that route. And then everybody, once they get into that dosing range where I just mentioned, that's where they all go, this is what I'm supposed to feel like. And they know because they went through the journey.
Yeah.
But I just tell guys, hey, just go straight to the penthouse. let's put you right at the high dose. And then when you feel like that effect and how you're supposed to feel, you can try using gradually smaller amounts per injection, and you'll find out where your minimal effective dose is. And then maybe you stay there, because why take more than you need? You're just going to have more estrogen conversion. You're going to waste product and money. So I have some guys that are great on like 180 milligrams every 3 days, 220, 200, whatever. That's the individualized part. But if you don't show them the goal, nobody knows. They have no perspective on it. And so that's my strategy. And then you look at about 2 or 3 weeks into starting their TRT, I check their estrogen levels and their DHT and make sure I don't have to control those metabolites and adjust them if I have to. That's the nuance. Like, every guy can take the same dose of testosterone. Where the therapy has to be individualized is in the control of the metabolic pathways.
That's just like females on what we're going to do with it. There's no guarantee what's going to happen. But
Oh,
I
yeah.
do know some guys that are dosing like 100 milligrams every 2 weeks because that's what their doctor's comfortable with. And from what you're
Yeah.
saying, I'm hearing if you're doing
There's
that low a dose, you would be better off doing it every 3 days to
yeah.
at least create some sort of baseline.
I would do that every day. When I tried a everyday regimen, and I did 80 milligrams per day, because that's 2,400 milligrams per month, if you do the math. So I was taking 80 milligrams every single day I did it for a week or two. And I was like, oh yeah, this is of course very stable, but I don't want to have to do shots every day. So then I tried doing 160 every 2 days. And that was, of course, all good and stable. And then I went to the 240, 250 every 3 days. And that's better. If you start spacing it out further, you will notice ups and downs. But yeah, if you look at the old drug prescribing guidelines, which I did at the very beginning 20 years ago, you look it up, right? Because you don't know anything. You're like, oh yeah, 100 to 200 milligrams every 2 weeks. That's what it says in the prescribing guidelines.
Mm.
And I'm going, because what they're doing is they're looking at how long the injection lasts, which means when do they go all the way back to baseline? Well,
Mm.
that's not where you want to be. You don't want to be there again ever, right?
Mm.
And so what these men experience is a few days of, hey, I feel better. And then it starts to fade. And then they have 10 days of garbage, where they feel terrible because they miss how they felt the first several days. And it's a shit show. I get guys all the time that have worked with other practitioners all over the country, internationally, and they're telling me what kind of regimens they've been put on and the advice they've been given and everything. I'm like, oh my God, this is such a huge deficiency in medical education. it's horrifying, because the potential benefit of this therapy is so huge, not just for the individuals, but for the world and the population and the military and everybody else, right? That it's such a glaring defect in our understanding and our culture right now. And that's why I like to do these discussions, because I'm a huge cheerleader for testosterone replacement done right and starting at early ages. And that's going to be a huge thing that helps our population if people would embrace this idea.
Yeah, the movie came back to me. It was Universal Soldier.
Yeah.
Imagine
So,
we put all our teens on testosterone now, and then they all decided to join the military. Like, nobody would mess with us. Last question, because you already kind of touched on this, but I know people are going to ask, so I want to squeeze it in. You said like the natural kind of, as we would call them, test boosters, they don't really make a difference. People ask and talk about the likes of Tonkat Ali, Shilajit, and Rhodiola would be the top three a lot. Do you think they make much of a difference? Are they worthwhile for some people trying, especially people who are still a bit uncomfortable with trying TRT? Like, are they a complete waste of money?
they're not a complete waste of money, but they are a profound waste of money. So the deal is, Tribulus terrestris is another one on that list. I tried this. Even if you look at the research, so like some of the companies that are promoting their products online, they'll show you like, we did our research, we raised testosterone by 300 points. That's about the best you're going to see people report, and that's from their own internal research. So that's as good as they got, right? 300, 330 points or whatever. So if you are starting at 300 or even 400, 500, and you get to 700 or 800, you're going to feel better. You in some cases you've doubled your testosterone. That is very noticeable. Like, oh yes, I feel so much better. But like I said, that's like putting the guy on 100 milligrams a week of testosterone kind of thing. You're going to see incremental improvement. Are you going to get any man up to 2000 with these products? God, no, nowhere even close. And the products cost substantially more than just using testosterone. So, like, why would you spend more money, swallow a handful of pills every day that have who knows what in them, right? Supplements these days are highly toxic from a lot of companies. You don't know what chemicals you're getting or ingredients you're getting in there. That's not necessarily safe versus spending less money to inject yourself with the exact hormone you need from a clean pharmaceutical source every 3 days. I don't understand why. I mean, I understand this hesitation, one, to stick yourself with a needle with anything, right? That's a turnoff. And then this idea like, well, what, I got to go to a pharmacy. It's a controlled substance. There's just so much sort of gravitas to the whole testosterone process that it makes it seem like a bigger deal than it should. But if I just swallow a bunch of pills and it raises my internal level, I improve on that. The other big problem is the reason your testosterone is low is because your balls don't work in the first place. Your testicles, your Leydig cells are so polluted with chemicals that they can't make more testosterone. So using methods to try to improve your own internal production when your machinery is defective doesn't make a lot of sense. You're not going to get to the goal. It's very insufficient. And I've had lots of guys that have tried all that stuff. I tried it at the beginning. Like I said, I used HCG also, which HCG, if you want to use something to just naturally raise your own production, HCG is the best thing to try. But it's also an injection under the skin, every day or two. And you'll get your level to rise about 300 points doing that too. But again, HCG is more expensive than testosterone, and it gets you nowhere near where you want to be. So it just doesn't make any sense.
What about testosterone gel on the testicles? Most women are getting testosterone gel for help with their libido and whatnot, but would that be as efficient or effective? Obviously, not as much as a syringe, but would there be some benefit?
Yeah, a few things about that. Like I used to at the beginning of this, a lot of men didn't want to do shots, so I put lots of men on testosterone cream. I would usually have a compounded cream made with a much higher dose because the manufactured ones like Androgel, Testament, things like that, they they have such a small amount of testosterone in them. You have to use about 4 or 5 times the recommended dose, and you got to put it on like 3 times a day to get anywhere near the levels that I'm talking about reaching. And part of the reason you have to put it on multiple times a day because the pharmacokinetics when you're rubbing it on and you're just getting the testosterone molecule in your bloodstream without the cypionate or the enanthate or whatever to make it a delayed release, it goes in right away and it's gone in 18 hours. Like I know that because I tested myself. I went on testosterone cream first, and I like to science the shit out of everything because I want to know stuff, not just think things are true. So I did my own, I put some on and then I drew my blood 6 hours later, like 12 hours later. so I could see what the profile was because that's not in the literature anywhere.
Yeah.
And what I found was that it would peak at around 6 hours, it seemed like. And then by 12 hours, it was halfway gone. And by about 18 hours, gone. You're back to baseline. So what happens when you have a guy prescribed, especially men, because we're so sensitive to this, but women too, if you're put on a transdermal testosterone, you end up, and if it's once a day, you end up on a roller coaster that most men hate. Most of the guys I talked to a bit on the gels, if they got a substantial enough dose to where they could really feel it, they hated it. They got really, really irritable because you feel good for half of the day and shitty for half of the day and good for and that's worse than just feeling shitty all the time because you get used to it. So most people are like, oh, I just got super irritable and all this. I'm like, oh yeah. And it's also way more likely to convert to DHT and make your hair fall out because the 5-alpha reductase enzyme that converts testosterone to dihydrotestosterone is really abundant in the skin near your hair follicles. It's where you make DHT right there on site, so you'll grow a bunch of body hair, but not make your prostate bigger. So there's this regional tissue concentration of 5-alpha reductase, and so guys on transdermal will make tons of DHT, like really high. And so that's another reason I discourage the use of that. That's what I noticed. My DHT went through the roof. I started to lose more hair. And so I was like, all right, I'll do injections. And so I really discourage people from doing topical, sorry, testosterone because of those things. It's just a really ineffective tool. It has way more problems than doing injectable. For women, it's less of a deal because their levels don't go nearly as high and the swings up and down aren't nearly as dramatic. But still, if a woman wants to use testosterone, they should apply it twice a day, not
Just
once.
to confirm, that's not why you're bald, right?
No, I actually have about 80% of my hair. I shave my head because I'm one of those rare men that looks way better bald. I look the hair that I was given by nature was unmanageable, untrainable. This is terrible, like Harry Potter, but worse. Is all the yeah. So no, I look
Maybe
much
like
better.
if you grow it back, you could just go for the dreadlock look or something like that.
Yeah, I'll try a wig first just to check it out.
Well,
Yeah,
we could talk and talk because I just
yeah,
could keep going and going. Maybe another time you got to get your day started. I
we
gotta
have to.
go.
If your
But
viewers come in with lots of questions and you compile a list of questions, I love that. I can answer questions all day long. This is my favorite thing to talk about, and I will talk
it's
about it all.
important, though. It's clearly very important. And there's a hunger for it now. With all things hormones, people are like, tell me more.
Yeah. And I'm not selling anything. Like, I don't sell products. I'm not selling testosterone booster supplements. I'm not selling a workout program. I'm not a life coach. Like,
Mhm.
this is just a public service announcement. Your balls don't work. You need to use testosterone if you want to lead a reasonably normal life, not,
Mhm.
not even your optimal life. If you want your optimal life existence, you need to use optimal testosterone, or nothing else is going to fill that void. It's just not.
Those are some wise words. We'll leave it there. This has been a pleasure. And
Yeah, I was supposed to tell you that I'm doing a bioidentical hormone therapy workshop that's all online in the middle of November, November 14th to 16th. And
Mhm.
I guess it's listed on Eventbrite. Probably find my name or our business name, Global Immunotherapy, or go to our administrative email, admin at drtyvincent.com. And there's the dates and everything. But my wife and I just decided to make it open to the general public because you get a handful of doctors and some of them will take the information and do things with it, but honestly this is a consumer driven industry, and the more the consumer is educated about this, the more they can help direct their own care with
Mhm.
their practitioners, and then the practitioners learn in the process. So we're going to allow the regular public to attend if they want to and learn a lot about hormone therapy. This is not going to be overly scientific or clinical. It's really or research based. It's really just clinical experience and how this actually seems to work.
Mhm.
From
Yeah,
my 20.
I'll get the links and I'll pop it in the description and I'll share your Instagram and do all the things. So, but and if I can make it, I'll totally be there with the rest of my questions.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Question.
You'll at least have one person there.
Yeah.
Well,
What about?
thank you, Dr. Vincent. This has been awesome. Like it was more than what I expected. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I love this. I do it all day. So next time.